Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Jessica if you're new here. I'm a stay-at-home mom to 2 young kids. I shared in a community post that I am sick, so I'm going to take as many breaks as I possibly can. And thankfully I have my tea here, so my hand looks kind of messed up. So to start off first, this video is I'm not going to be doing a summary. So if you are looking for that, I'm so sorry, but check out my other videos on the case. And then also what I recommend is that you do a quick YouTube search and you can see Law and Crime or many other creators covering this case. And then you'll be able to get your full, well-rounded picture of why I'm even talking about what I'm talking about today. This video is meant in succession with all my other videos. So my last video was Who is Jodi Hildebrandt? That took a lot of time, as most videos do take a lot of time, just like in general, but that was a really long time. And so it's taking more time to gather more information. And this is just, like I said, meant in order. So if you haven't seen that video, go back and watch that video first, and then it'll make more sense why I'm talking about what I'm talking about today. So let's just hop into today's video, everybody. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about many things in this video. Like some things, it just all has to do with Connections Classroom and this whole case, whatever. But the first major thing I want to hop into is this claim about Connections Classroom or Connections Foundation being a nonprofit. I had a comment from somebody about this, and I was planning on looking into it, but I was like, is it really anything other than like, okay, they received money? So if you do a Google search, you'll see that the 8-passenger snark Reddit had mentioned that Connections Foundation received $20,000 because they claim to be a nonprofit, and they received it from a nonprofit that gives to nonprofits and businesses. And then I also saw that KUTV and other news articles had said that Connections Foundation had been filing paperwork since 2014 to 2020, or they hadn't filed since 2020, like how they worded it, of tax forms claiming they're tax exempt, which means they're nonprofit, but it hasn't been filed since 2020. Sorry, that was kind of confusing. It's a weird way for me to say that. And then I want to just look into that myself. So first of all, I saw that Connections Foundation became a registered business August 22nd, 2014, and they were only registered until November 25th, 2015. So this is Connections Foundation. As we know, Pam Botcher is the president of the Connections Foundation. I also looked up her. I was trying to see like, okay, more background of like when she really met Jodi, but I can't see anything. I'm assuming that they met in university because I saw that the University of Utah actually does have a program for interpersonal degree in communication or whatever it is that Pam has. I believe that's what it's called. She just has a degree. So I don't really know what that means. Like if she just like had like a 2-3 year degree, it's not like a master's, it's just like probably a bachelor's, but I also can't find that online. If I ever find that online, I can do like a short just showing it or whatever. So I assume that they met in university because that is where you get that program. But Pam also has 7 children. So I'm like trying to think like when she would have had the time to do this, especially because her husband went back to school later in life. So the Connections Foundation was registered for about 1.5 years as a business. But as the KUTV news articles had said, and then many other sources, that they had filed tax forms, but haven't filed them since 2020. So from 2014 to 2020. So then it's like, okay, in my mind, I was like, clearly they're doing business. Like there's some kind of shady thing, in my personal opinion, if you're like registering your business, but then you're also you're filing tax forms. I don't know if that's like, okay, I have no idea. Like the laws in that case, like I'm a mom, I'm not like a lawyer or something like that. So I'd be interested to see what a lawyer would think about that. First of all, they've been filing that tax form since that time. So let me just look here. There are many classifications of nonprofits in the US. So I'm just going to read this from the internet so you can see. So I was looking at what a 501c3 is. So the company that gave Connections Foundation the $20,000 grant, or however you want to call it, the money, is the Community Foundation of Utah. So they are a 501c3, which a 501c3 is, I'll just read it straight from this internet website. It's from Wikipedia, but every website will say the same thing for this. It says a 501c3 organization is a United States corporation, trust, unincorporated association, or other type of organization exempt from federal income tax under Section 501c3 of Title 26 of the United States Code. It is one of the 29 types of 501c nonprofit organizations in the United States. So they are a nonprofit who gave Connections Foundation $20,000. And as we can see, I looked up on the IRS website that yes, Connections Foundation did file their Form 990N, which a Form 990N is an electronic e-postcard for tax-exempt organizations not required to file Form 990 or 990EZ. It is used by small tax-exempt organizations for annual reporting and can only be submitted electronically. So Connections Foundation filed that. I have all the screenshots here. They filed all that from 2014 to 2020 is when they stopped filing. And the address that Connections Foundation uses is what I said in my previous video about Jodi Hildebrandt. It's the 233 South Pleasant Grove Boulevard address, which shows right there that that is indeed Connections Foundation is Jodi Hildebrandt's business. And the reason why I'm making that clarification there is because when you look up Utah businesses, there's a website you can look up Utah businesses. You can see owners, registered agents. If you want details, you have to pay for it, which I paid for it for Jodi Hildebrandt and a couple other people. Some have led nowhere, so money down the drain. But when you look up the Connections Foundation registered agent, the person, like, because all of Jodi's businesses are all registered to her. Everything. There's no one else's name on it at all, which is very interesting, including like all the ones that Ruby was in and even the ones with Pam, like no one else is registered except for Jodi. But with the Connections Foundation, like I said, they registered in 2014, in the summer of 2014. The person on there is a man named Carl Hernandez. And so I was like, okay, maybe this guy used this business name at one point and it's just like coincidence, because if you look up connections for Utah businesses, there's many connections with an X companies, like a limousine company and just like other stuff that's not at all connected to Jodi or Pam or Ruby. So I was like, this is so weird, this guy. So then it gives his address on there. So then I looked up that address and Carl Hernandez is not there at that address, but I did see someone else. And so then I looked up that person's name on Facebook and eventually found the connection that that is Carl's son. So then I looked and he does live at home. And then eventually I found that, okay, that is Carl's address. So I found that this Carl was the registered agent. Okay. This is going to sound very confusing, but I hope you're following. I'm so sorry if this sounds confusing. Carl Hernandez was registered as this agent. Okay. And then when I look it up, I see where the mail went. So the IRS sent paperwork to the Connections Foundation to be like, hey, you received your tax exempt status, just letting you know that you're approved, sort of thing, right? Like I see the actual paperwork, which I'll put on the screen here as well. And it says care of. So who the person it was sent to was a guy named Eric Gurr. So Eric Gurr, his address is on State Street, which is interesting because I've mentioned State Street many times before. It's in Orem, this one. So it says, just like it's a letter, it says, we are pleased to inform you that upon review of your application for tax exempt status, we have determined that you are exempt from federal income tax under section 501c3 of the internal code, blah, 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 whatever. So that was effective date was August 22nd, 2014. So the same day that they registered their business. So it like got post dated. So it's like, they definitely planned from the very beginning that Connections Foundation would be a nonprofit, which is interesting because it's like, in my brain, I'm like, is Connections Classroom operating under Connections Foundation so that they can claim tax exempt status so that they can actually have more money? This is like, they probably, I can't say they did it illegally because it obviously is done probably in a legal way. Eric Gurr, if you're wondering, he is a CPA and he is still operating and everything now. I'm only sharing this information because these are public people, okay? He's a public person and this is public information easily found online of this guy. So he was appointed the power of attorney, which means like all communication would go to him, is my understanding. And then when I went online on Facebook, I saw that Eric Gurr and Carl Hernandez are Facebook friends. Like, that's so weird, right? Like, I said this to my husband, he's like, well, it makes sense if they're just like the both people who are tied with Connections Foundation. But I'm like, okay, but wouldn't they be friends with like Pam and like those people? Like, it just doesn't make sense. It's so weird because this is Jodi's business, like for sure, because it's registered to her exact address where she had Sunrise Counseling Center and Connections Classroom. So let me know what you guys think below. Like, this is very, very interesting. Okay, so you may be like me and wondering like, who the hell is Carl Hernandez and why? How do you know Jodi? Like, how would he possibly be like the front man for registering this business? Well, when I looked him up, he was a law professor at Brigham University, BYU. Crazy, right? So if you know anything about this case, you know BYU is like, everyone goes there in Utah and Idaho. Like, I know it's a generalization, so don't take that as like, has to be fact that everyone goes there, but he was a professor of law from August 2013 to present. Apparently he's still a professor of law there, which is absolutely crazy because he was a professor of law while registering Connections Foundation. very weird to me. And then in June 2022, he became the vice president of belonging. And it says, I'm just reading straight from his LinkedIn. It says, BYU's Office of Belonging is committed to helping BYU to achieve a community of belonging described in the university's newly created statement of belonging. A lot of just mumbo jumbo jargon in my opinion. But anyways, I found on another website what the vice president of belonging does. And it says that they're just responsible for the leadership and management within that university, because apparently a lot of really big universities have someone who does this. So he's responsible for like the culture and the connectedness with the students, just general morale in the university, which is absolutely crazy. So he is a really high up person in BYU. It's really wild to me because it shows the connections that Jodi has within BYU. Jodi has these connections at BYU, as we've known also from Adam Steed's story, which unfortunately his whole story from Mormon Stories podcast got taken down. And I did listen to true crime podcasts one, but I don't find that one nearly. It's not the same rate as, like, I can't even rate them on the same scale of being good. They're just completely different interviews in my personal opinion. Yeah, there's a couple of good things in there, but he saved his meat for the Mormon Stories podcast, so it's unfortunate that that's gone. Hopefully it comes back. But we all know Kevin Frankie was a professor, or still is currently listed as a professor at BYU. I'm curious what other people think, like who this Carl Hernandez is and why he was the registered agent. It literally makes no sense in my brain why he would do it. Like, why wouldn't Pam's name be there? At least if she is the president, she should be the registered agent. I've mentioned before the possible connection of Jodi Hildebrandt and the current Attorney General, Sean Reyes. So Sean Reyes is also Facebook friends with Carl Hernandez, like on both their public, like, hey, I'm a public servant, this is my Facebook, let's be friends, like thousands of people, and even their small Facebooks. They're clearly not good at their privacy settings. They should probably get a little bit better at that. I'm sure they'll be after this video. People, I've noticed after my videos where I talk about them, they've changed their privacy settings so you can barely find anything about them online and you can't see their profiles anymore. So I'm guessing that's what's going to happen here as well. And remember, with Jodi giving up her license, she didn't actually give up her license. It says that she has a limited license. And remember in the article, it said that they were working with the Attorney General's office, and they like basically convinced her to temporarily give up her license. And it wasn't even giving up her license, it was just saying like, hey, I'm not going to practice as a psychologist in the state I was doing before. I mentioned this before in another video, that I found it weird that they had to convince her, and it showed that the connections, because if someone's allegedly getting charged for a crime, you can actually take their license, is what I've seen through my research. But it's interesting that in this case, they had to convince her, it just doesn't make sense, doesn't add up. But now it does, in a way, add up, because we see of all of Jodi's connections through these people. And I'm sorry I used the word connections. I've tried to find other words, but it's just not happening. Getting back to a little bit of the beginning, where I said that they had filed the 990N form since 2014 to 2020 and just stopped doing that. Well, we all know that what changed in 2020, Jodi hooked up with Ruby. And I don't mean hooked up like physically. I just mean they joined arms and decided to do their business together. So they stopped doing the 8 passengers eventually. I don't know the exact date of the 8 passenger stuff, because I'm not really looking more into the 8 passenger stuff. I've been looking more into like the Jodi connections type stuff. But anyone can comment below. It's okay. You can do that if you want to. That's when they joined forces. So it's probably why they didn't have to do that. And also, Jodi did not, Connections Classroom or Connections Foundation did not get a PPP loan, but 8 passengers did get a PPP loan. So she got money somehow. They joined forces, and that's probably why she didn't have to be a nonprofit, because they had their cash cow Ruby and Kevin, people they were manipulating. They were easily manipulative people. I don't say that to get Ruby and Kevin off the hook, because they're definitely not off the hook, but they are definitely people who are not good people either, but they were also manipulated by somebody despite them not being good people either, which says something there. And if you're curious, no, Jodi is not listed as a friend to Carl Hernandez, Eric Gurr, or Sean Reyes on Facebook, but this is because I cannot see the Facebook list of a few of these people. I think just Eric Gurr, I couldn't see his Facebook friends list, but they didn't like anything. And I'm sure these people probably deleted her if they were Facebook friends at any point, because Jodi has like 2 Facebook profiles. And don't be mistaken, there is another one that someone just recently did, and they put that Jodi was in a relationship with Ruby, which is so funny. I'm sorry if my hair is like really weird. That they were in a relationship with Ruby, which is so funny. So that's not a real profile though. There are people that they're friends with that are like old people, so you'd be like, oh, maybe that is, it's not anything. That is a fake profile if you're looking on Facebook at all.
Stadium, Salt Lake City. Get Loud for Children concert. Rise up for the World Day Against Human Trafficking. Here I am with one of my best buddies, Sean Reyes, Attorney General of Utah. Sean, thanks for coming, bro. Thanks for being here.
Everybody rise up.
Okay, so obviously the most natural thing to do next would be looking into who the Community Foundation of Utah is, like who runs it, who, whatever, at that time. Because Jodi was given money in 2015. The tax form shows that $20,000 was given to them. So I looked up the Community Foundation of Utah and found the staff, and there was a big change that happened. I think it was in 2016. No, it was in 2015. So like halfway through 2015 in like May. So a new girl took over, Alex Eaton, and she said, I found a podcast that she did, and she talked about how when she came into the Community Foundation, it was kind of like a gong show.
Let's take a step back to when you joined the Community Foundation. What state was it in? It was in Utah, but like in terms of was it fully fledged? Did you take someone's place, or did you have to come in and kind of take it to the next level?
Well, yeah, we'd been around about 6 years. I've been there almost 5 years now. And my predecessor was definitely a rainmaker. And my joke that I've said to her is there was water everywhere. Yeah. And she'd even said to me, that's a bit of a mess, Alex. But she got it off its feet. It was fantastic, but it was really about not being everything to everyone at every price. Mm-hmm. I mean, we had all kinds of funds that didn't really make sense. We had strategies we used that didn't really work. We did a bunch of scholarships that cost $1 to make 25 cents. I mean, there was a lot of things that needed to be cleaned up. And at the time, we were 50 separately managed accounts. So we'd count to like Merrill Lynch, Morgan, because donors can have accounts other places.
Right.
And we didn't have anyone on staff who had a finance or accounting degree.
Wow.
and at the time, we were only 27 million. But,
okay.
I was so fortunate to find a CPA who'd been at Deloitte and Johnson & Johnson, who's still with us. I hope you stay at Yuki forever. And just kind of clean house and get the right people on the bus. And I think it probably took 2 or 3 years to really right size it.
So she just said it was like kind of crazy, and she had to clean house, and it took a while. She didn't just like fire everybody, but it took a while. She had to bring people in, and it was kind of a gong show. So I was like, okay, they were onto something now. A gong show. Like she said that they had like so many accounts spread out, and it could be like there's a foundation, and then there's different branches in that foundation. Like there could be all these different nonprofits within it, and they lump it together so that it's not like 20 organizations giving money. It's like 4. I'm just giving like a general number. That's not the numbers. But if that makes sense, she said it was like kind of like mishmash all over the place. So then I was looking into who was working at that time and when did the staff change. So basically all the staff left at some point that were there when Jodi and Pam had received that money. So the Community Foundation of Utah was the last foundation in the United States to be. So it was a pretty big deal. Every other state had a foundation, so a nonprofit running nonprofits within that state, and Utah didn't have one. But Fraser Nelson opened this organization in 2008 and remained the CEO until the spring of 2015. She opened it with Greg Warnock. Greg Warnock is like really big in the industry of business and nonprofits and philanthropy. He gives a lot of money. He's like, I don't know if he's a billionaire, but pretty close to it. He's very well known. And what's interesting is if you try to look them up, it takes a lot of digging to find out that they were the CEOs and co-founders of the Community Foundation of Utah. It's like something that they're not proud of, which is so mind-boggling. If you listen to podcasts, you would see that the hosts bring it up and like in like their bio, like, hey, introducing Fraser Nelson, blah, blah, blah. Brings up what they did, like their work history, but they never talk about it ever, ever, ever. Like, yes, they've been recognized for it while they were doing it, but after they left, they never brought it up. And it's probably because, in my assumption, Alex Eaton chose to speak poorly in a way about these people, saying how poorly it was run and whatever. So anyways, what I found noteworthy, I just made like a little notes in my phone about Fraser Nelson, because I was trying to see like, is she the person that was the one that was able to give the money to Jodi? Like, because there's some connection, someone had to be the person, right? I see that she wasn't religious at all. She was in fact an atheist. So I'm like, okay, everyone's been Mormon in this story. She right now works for the National Trust for Local News, which is another nonprofit within local news. They're trying to like keep newspapers around and whatever. It's just generalization. It's really boring stuff in my personal opinion. And her current nonprofit, this is crazy, is they have a lot of people who fund their nonprofit. One of them is the Society Foundation, whose founder is George Soros. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's mental. And then another one is the MacArthur Foundation, who is worth over $8 billion. Billion. That's crazy. So she has connections, okay, to have these people fund her nonprofit, something that she founded. And she worked for, oh no, this is someone else, but this woman worked for a lot of companies. So anyways, for a while there, for like at least a week and a half, I was thinking, okay, this is Fraser Nelson. When I was going to do my video, I was going to mention that Fraser Nelson is probably the person who got Jodi the money, whatever. And then after more digging, I learned about Catherine Fife. Catherine Fife is really well known as well in the community in Utah. She worked for Make-A-Wish, I can put on the screen all these companies that she worked for. She also worked there during that time, I think only until like 2016 or something. I did find pictures, so if I see anything, I'll put that on the screen. I just can't remember off the top of my head. But she worked there during that time. And if you're wondering why I'm not thinking about Greg Warnock, I looked into him. There's really nothing there, and I feel like, why would he give it? I don't know. I just feel like Jodi doesn't really have the power over stronger-ish men. But that's my assumption. It could be him as well. So Catherine Fife. This is where the connections get kind of hazy, because I have really tried to find stuff, but Catherine is not well known on social media. Like, she doesn't have a social media presence. And so it was really hard to find things. There is a woman named Dr. Jennifer. It's like Fanilson Fife. So a lot of people who have like reputable families, they keep their last name, is what I noticed in Utah. And I say Utah because I've only looked into people from Utah. So it could be around the world that people do this, but I'm just talking about Utah. So she is a doctor. She also, which is so interesting, she also is she's a psychologist, but like better than Jodi, because Jodi is not a doctor. But she counsels couples with sex addiction, but like different. It's not like Lifestar Network that I saw, at least. She's known in the Mormon community for sex addiction and sex therapy. And she also wrote a thesis, like I think within a year of Jodi's thesis that she wrote, which I shared in my previous video. And the thesis was titled Breaking Stereotypes on LDS Female Sexuality. How crazy, right? This is, it writes itself, these connections write themselves. Like, it's so crazy. And then Jodi and this woman were both on a podcast together. I have searched for like 3 days with all the spare time I had trying to find this podcast, and I can't find it. If I find it, I will definitely insert a clip here, but they were both on the podcast together. Now, I can't find out if Jennifer and Catherine are related. They have the same last name and they live in the same community, so I can only assume that they're related, but I can't find out for sure. I think that they might be cousins, but if anyone knows anything, comment below, of course. But I think that they are indeed related. So they did this podcast together. I think it was actually in like 2015, 2016. I can't remember. But what's interesting is that the person who did this podcast, she's like a coaching company, like coaching is in the name. They follow each other on Instagram, and on Facebook, they're friends as well with Jennifer Fife. And there was another guest on that podcast at the time, but they're not with Jodi. So it doesn't mean they were never. They might have deleted her as a friend, but they were friends at some point, which again is interesting to me, which is why I'm including it in this video. So I think what it was is that the way that Jodi was able to get it is because of her connections with Carl Hernandez, with Sean Reyes, and also with Catherine Fife. Catherine Fife is an assistant deputy mayor in Salt Lake City right now. There's a couple of those. I don't really understand the position. All I know is that position, if something happens to the mayor, they can assume the position of the mayor, is what I saw from a Google search. I'm not saying that these people are for sure all connected. This is just my suspicion. And I'm just really curious if anyone else agrees with me or thinks maybe I'm just like grasping at straws here. I don't know, but I really want to find that connection on how they received the money. And I believe this is the connection on how they got the money, because they didn't get money any other year. I searched high and low. I did not see they received any other grants. I did see that Alex Eaton spoke in a podcast about how sometimes organizations want to give money to a business, but they don't want their name in it. So what they'll do is they'll give it to the Utah Community Foundation, and then the Utah Community Foundation will then gift it or grant it to a business.
Okay, so you're really helping people find the right things to donate to if they're donors, and you're finding really good ways to put money in the right nonprofits. Is that right? Do you work with nonprofits to make sure that they are efficient in their use of funds and things like that?
Yeah, yes and no. So maybe the easiest way to boil this down is there's two sides to the house. One side is donors. So we have about 150 donors who we invest their money. They donate it to, we invest it. It has a return that they don't have to pay taxes on. And that money can either be a long-term pool of capital so they can give to the organizations they care about in perpetuity, or they can, give shorter term. And some of them come to us and they already know who they want to give to, but a lot of them have something they're passionate about or an experience their family has had. And so what we do is research what organizations are in that interest area that are doing good work, and then we match them. So that's one side of the house.
Yeah. So you're helping donors be more tax efficient and also donate, tax efficiently, but also to the things that they really want to donate to.
That could have been what happened as well. There could be someone who wanted to give Jodi $20,000, but couldn't, and then instead gave it to the community foundation to then give to Jodi. So again, that means Catherine might not be involved, or Fraser, or all these people might not be involved, but someone else wanted to give $20,000 to Jodi and then did it through the community foundation, because Alex brought this up, right? And so it could have been given when Alex went in May of 2015, because that's when Fraser had left, but Catherine was still there at that time. So it's just hard to say. But I think it could be either those two routes. Either, knew somebody there, or someone wanted to give Jodi the money and then did so that way. So that's all I have when it comes to the nonprofit information. Connections Classroom is not a nonprofit, but Connections Foundation was a nonprofit who is not currently operating. So it's weird that they're still listed on the Connections Classroom website as being a thing, because right now they don't exist, whatever. But again, they have a business that was only registered for a year, but yet was able to file tax information. Like, I just don't understand that. Okay, so now this next thing is really tricky to share, because I can't give out people's personal information and their addresses, but I can block out what I can and maybe give the first few letters. Okay, so there's this person, Vanessa Walsh, who I didn't mention in another video. I just said VW, but she is a public figure. She is an assistant attorney general. So she works with Sean Reyes in his office with him. She is, in my personal opinion, connected to Jodi. They both owned the same house. And let me think. I think it was 2015, 2016. I'm so sorry. There's so much information in my head from researching this. It's a lot of information to remember. But they both owned the same house. Not at the same time, within 6 months of each other. What had happened is Vanessa had owned a house and then give it to the real estate agent, and the real estate agent then sold it immediately to Jodi. This real estate agent, I believe, was flipping the house with somebody else, and I had shared that in a previous video, which you can go watch that video if you want to. But then when I look up another property it's so weird. They're the exact same address. One is in Provo, Utah, and one is in American Fork. They're 15, 20 minutes away from each other in different zip codes. So at first I thought, okay, maybe it was a new build, that then its confirmation address was the one in American Fork, because Jodi's previous address before being 854 Tagu Court, it was 856 in construction and then became 854, or vice versa, whatever the numbers were. So I thought maybe that was the case. But because Provo and American Fork are in different locations, when I look up on this one website, it says Vanessa Walsh and Jodi Hildebrandt were the only owners of this house. Now, when I Google search it, a house does come up. However, there are no real estate listings or anything like that. So this is one area that I've been wanting to share, one thing I've been wanting to share, but I couldn't share because I couldn't find any connections. But at this point, I've been sitting on this information since literally September 1st. This is how long I've known this information, and I just couldn't fit it in any video. So I'm fitting it in here because it has to do with all these officials who work in these offices together. And so Jodi knows this person as well, in my personal opinion. I can't for sure confirm it, but it looks as if that they know each other, maybe own property together. I don't know. Can someone else help me figure this out? Because I can't figure it out. I don't know what this means. And I don't want to give out too information. And then I can't remember if it's this house. It must be this house. It's this house that Jodi used to own, who now someone by the last name Swallow lives there. And so I'm not going to share the address, but I can share the last name Swallow. So this person, I'll call them Jay Swallow. They live at this house, and Jodi sold her house to this person. And this person is related to John Swallow. John Swallow was the previous attorney general before Sean Reyes. He has a lot of scandal attached to him, and he had to get out of office because he did some shady stuff. And then Sean Reyes took over, and he wants to get back into office, but so far it's not happening. So that is also very weird, right? I know it's a small community, small in quotations, but I just find that very interesting. This is another piece of information I've been sitting on for so long, and his daughters do MLMs. John Swallow's daughters do MLMs, and it's just, I know I'm not hating on MLM. People who are wondering, if you are wondering why I talk about MLMs, I'm not hating on them. I actually did an MLM, and I want to share my story because I have a lot of information about being in an MLM, and I'm not hating on them, okay? I don't like them. They could work for some people, of course, but yeah, I don't like them. So she is, in my mind, also connected to the previous attorney general. Yeah, so Sean Reyes has been the attorney general since 2013. This is all around very similar years, which I find very interesting. And I said that a lot as well. So From what I've seen, when I found this like tour thing that this guy did, I was trying to see if that was connected to Jodi as well. It's this YouTube video of this guy like highlighting entrepreneurs. He had said, like, the people in Utah had said how easy it is to just like pick up a phone and talk to an official and get in their office and talk to them, where you can't do that in a lot of states, but in the state of Utah is very easy.
One of the things I really love about Utah is access, even access to the governor. When we had one of our Korean portfolio companies come to visit, it really only took a single phone call for us to get 20 minutes, in person with the governor, which I can't imagine happening, in New York or New Jersey, where I grew up.
So that it is like a small community in that way, is that it's very easy to be connected to officials, where maybe in like a big city that wouldn't really be possible. Not that Salt Lake isn't big, but it's just like small in that way. Another thing I found out about Sean Reyes, like I said, this video's all over the place, so sorry if this is like really hard to follow or confusing or doesn't make sense, but I did find this interesting, which is why I'm sharing it. So anyway, so Sean Reyes was a bishop from 2000 to 2005, and what I looked up online is I Google search, it says, is an LDS bishop always a bishop? That was like the suggested thing to me, and it says once you're a bishop, you're always a bishop. It's so interesting. Like, I know you always have the backs of people who are like in your circle and in your community, in your church. So there's that connection as well, not just like the political connection, but he was a bishop at one point, which I found pretty like noteworthy. Okay, so something that we all would have seen online is the fact that Frankie is by BYU professor and received really bad reviews, and it went viral. Apparently, I didn't see when it went viral, but I just saw online like people talking about it. So I had my suspicions about this, not saying it's untrue that he received bad reviews, because I went to ratemyprofessor.com and saw that he did receive them. But I was listening to Hidden True Crimes interview with Adam, because the Mormon Stories podcast one is not online anymore, as I've already said. And I did learn something. I did get more clarification on other men's lives being destroyed, which we've already all know about this. So I'm going to insert that here.
The truth is, everyone looks at the men that lost their kids, lost all these rights. When I was in jail, this guy told me his terrible therapist story, and it was Jodi Hildebrandt. He was in a storage unit with a protective order. Now he's in jail and he's losing his kids for charges. I met a guy when I was painting curb addresses because I couldn't have a normal job with all this going on. I was painting house addresses, and he was in his house, and he told me the same story, and it was all like he was fighting criminal charges in a custody case, losing his kids as well. It was just insane. The systematic methodology to which this lady massively drove these people through, and where was all her money coming from?
Given that context, I was thinking that the reviews could be real or they could be fake, right? So it's either one or the other. And if they are real, well, then it happened, perhaps the first bad review happened in 2020. So 2020 is when Jodi entered Ruby and Kevin's lives, right? So it could be that Kevin learned all these things and became a terrible person, and, just whatever. It doesn't mean he wasn't a terrible person before, but, became even stricter, and then it reflected in his bad reviews, because his reviews started in 2016 on Rate My Professor, and they were all good until 2020. So in 2020, he started receiving bad reviews. And then specifically what I found interesting is that his reviews in 2022, May of 2022, specifically mentioned TikTok. People are like, oh, he doesn't like TikTok or whatever. So either these reviews are false, as in like fans or people from the Reddit or whatever it is, decided just to bombard him with negative reviews in 2022, or he did in fact talk about TikTok and how much he hated it in his classes, which is unprofessional. You shouldn't have done that, whatever. But then when I looked on the Connections Facebook group, which I think they changed their name to Connections now from Connections Classroom, I don't know. But when I just went on it, I saw that the videos of Ruby talking about TikTok were from May 2022 as well. So it's just weird to me. In my brain, I'm thinking, okay, either it all aligns and, they don't like TikTok and whatever from the kids' school situation happening, and then he's talking about it in there, so it corroborates with those reviews. Or it's like what Adam talked about in terms of Jodi destroying people's lives. We know that she destroyed his life in regards to BYU as well. So did she try to get him to have bad reviews? Because if they started in 2022, also they started at that 2022 time, 2020, but then they became more persistent through 2022 when Kevin was no longer with his wife. So I just find this very interesting. I'm wondering what anyone else thinks about this. Like, I don't know what to make of it, other than we all know that Jodi was trying to destroy Kevin's life, and was she trying to allege ABUSC from him? Like, because she's connected, as we've seen through earlier in this video when I shared about her connections in the legal system of Utah. So I'm just like, I don't know what to make of it. I just find it coincidental. I don't know. It's just very odd. What do you guys think about it? Is anyone else thinking what I'm thinking, that he is like Adam in that one tiny way? And I don't say Kevin is good. I don't think he's a good dad. I think he's just not a good person. But I'm just wondering, like like I said before, he could be also be getting manipulated by Jodi in the process of not being a good person. It's just this is a very interesting case because it's so weird that Jodi could have this hold on people. Like, I don't know why. Okay, so one last thing I want to mention in regards to Kevin is the registering of the 8 passengers as a business with the state of Utah. So let's go back first. So 8 Passengers Production LLC was registered May 27th, 2016 till July 1st, 2021. And that was with Ruby because obviously they're doing YouTube and that was their business. And then there's a second business registered, which is 8 Passengers Kids LLC. And that one is registered to Trevin Workman. And that is an attorney, which is very interesting. I don't know why it's registered to an attorney. Maybe he represents the children, which would make sense. That business was registered December 29th, 2019 to December 29th, 2021, or December 20th, whatever. You see the dates. And then when Kevin and Ruby were still together, so March 29th, 2022, 8 Passengers Company LLC was registered, but under Kevin, which is interesting. I don't know why it got changed from Ruby to then Kevin. And so remember, Kevin and Ruby separated July of 2022. Well, if you see here, the last time that this business was renewed was July 1st, 2023, but there is literally 0 online presence for 8 Passengers as a company. So it doesn't make sense. I am so confused. Does anyone think this is very weird? But let me know what you think. Why is Kevin registering their business still? And he registered it while he was still separated from Ruby. And then just like a month before, this whole case started happening. So very odd. Like, it's so weird. So yeah, so this was a very long video. Thank you to anyone who watched it. I really enjoyed putting it together. Like researching it has been it's been like a headache because it takes so long to try to verify and see. Like, I before tried to see if there's a connection between Jennifer Fife and Catherine Fife, but I couldn't find it. So it's just all speculation. All of this is speculation. This is just me, stay-at-home mom, as I shared, doing commentary and some deeper dives into this case. And I'm really enjoying it. Let me know if you like this video at all, or if you don't like it, whatever. We're all entitled to our own opinions. I want to get content out more. Someone said in the comments that I'm like diminishing my content by saying I wish I could out more, but I can't. But I don't think that's the case. I'm just being transparent with you guys, saying I wish I could get more out and I can't. Just being matter of fact, I just can't get more content out, and that's okay. I don't need to pump out content so fast. That video I did on Blaze, that was a lot easier to get out. It's easier to get those style videos out, but I enjoy doing both. I enjoy doing the sit down style and the other style, but these sit down ones are a lot harder to do, especially because, like I said, my kids have been sick and I've been sick. But sorry for the long-winded outro. I hope that you guys are doing good, and I really hope you guys can avoid getting a cold. I'm at the tail end of this cold now, and I've had to stop to cough a lot. But yeah, I'm loading myself with supplements, and just do your best, take care of yourselves. If you haven't gotten sick yet, I advise you to stock up on medicine. I stocked up before my kids got sick, and I'm so happy that I did, because then I didn't have to go rushing out. But yeah, take care of yourselves, and I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Bye guys.